Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep into the world of Luke Combs today.
Right.
Using a couple of interviews you sent in, one from 60 Minutes Australia and another with Joe Rogan.
Cool.
Now, even if you're not a huge country music fan, stick with us.
Yeah.
Combs' story has these layers I think anyone who's trying to make their mark can relate to.
Yeah.
Breaking into a really tough industry, dealing with fame that kind of hits you like a ton of bricks,
Right.
and facing some surprisingly personal struggles, even when things seem picture perfect from the outside.
It's really fascinating how Combs flips the script on what we think of as a, you know, typical country star.
Yeah.
Like even his background.
Yeah, he talks about having a pretty normal, even kind of boring childhood,
Yeah.
solid, loving family, but definitely not one with the silver spoon.
Right.
I think in one of the interviews, he jokes about like a broken washing machine being a major crisis.
Right.
So,
He wasn't like a prodigy or anything either musically.
Yeah.
He didn't even pick up a guitar until he was 21.
I know. It makes you rethink that whole 10,000 hours rule, right?
Totally.
He was super into rugby in college.
Wow.
His parents gave him a guitar in like 7th grade, and it just sat there gathering dust.
Oh yeah, classic teenage rebellion if your parents suggested it's automatically not cool.
Exactly.
But it's funny how like boredom can sometimes be a catalyst.
Yeah.
Combs talks about this aha moment he had sitting on his parents' porch one summer.
Okay.
Restless friends were gone. Mom casually mentions that, like, some famous country stars didn't start until their 20s.
Really?
And it was like a light bulb went off for him.
Wow. So music suddenly didn't seem so out of reach.
Exactly.
He dusts off that old guitar and basically teaches himself to play that summer.
Yep.
What I find so impressive looking back is how strategic he was right from the start.
Yeah.
He wasn't chasing some vague dream of making it big. He set these smaller, achievable goals.
Right.
Which I think is a great lesson for anyone, really.
Yeah, it's that classic build a solid foundation approach.
Yeah.
Focusing on connecting with fans directly playing those smaller gigs.
Yeah.
And he was so savvy with social media.
Yes.
He was like one of the first country artists to really leverage platforms like Vine. Remember those?
Yo, yeah, the 6-second videos.
Exactly. Like he'd post these amazing snippets of himself singing and it just snowballed from there.
It's crazy. And you included the article about him turning down The Voice, which is wild. So many artists see that show as their big break.
Right.
But he felt like it wouldn't be true to his vision.
That decision really speaks to his commitment to authenticity.
For sure.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hype and chase opportunities that promise like quick fame.
Yeah.
But he stuck to his guns.
And that seems to be a recurring theme for him.
Yeah.
He comes across as incredibly grounded and self-aware.
Totally.
Even pokes fun at himself for not fitting that classic country star mold.
Oh, right.
He just owns it.
Right. He even jokes about not being like the typical, tall, chiseled, heartthrob type. And I think that honesty really resonates with people.
It does.
He's comfortable in his own skin, and it shines through in his music and how he interacts with fans.
There's a great anecdote in one of the interviews about his CMA Entertainer of the Year award acceptance speech.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of this big emotional outpouring,
Yeah.
he simply says, "I don't deserve this, but I'm glad I got it."
This is such a refreshing moment
Eh.
of humility.
I know.
Really solidified his image as someone who hasn't let success change who he is at his core.
You can really see how grounded he is in his songwriting, too.
Oh, yeah.
He's incredibly candid about pulling inspiration from his own life experiences,
Right.
which I think explains why his songs resonate so deeply with so many people.
It's that raw honesty, that vulnerability
Yes.
that people connect with.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
How much does knowing the person behind the music actually enhance your appreciation for their art?
That's such a great question. And speaking of interesting pairings, we have to talk about some of his unexpected collaborations.
The ones with Ed Sheeran and Miranda Lambert definitely raised some eyebrows.
You know when you hear Combs talk about hanging out with Ed Sheeran at his house,
Yeah.
having Sunday roast, just chilling?
Yeah.
It really humanizes both of them.
And then that crazy story about them scrambling back to the U.S. when COVID hit.
Oh my gosh, yes. Picture this. They're at Sheeran's place enjoying a quiet weekend. And Bam Combs gets this frantic middle-of-the-night call from his manager.
Oh, no.
Borders are closing. They have to get on a plane ASA.
Wow.
It just goes to show that even celebrities get caught up in those wild, unexpected turns of events. There's another hilarious anecdote about Sheeran and a shotgun in one of the interviews.
Oh, yeah.
But we won't spoil it for you.
You'll have to dive into that yourself.
Now, on a more serious note, we need to talk about how open Combs has been about his struggles with OCD and anxiety.
It's something he continues to deal with, even amidst his massive success,
Absolutely.
which I think is incredibly powerful.
It really challenges the perception that once you achieve a certain level of success, your problems magically disappear.
Right.
He's living proof that that's not the case.
And what's particularly interesting is that he experiences something called purely obsessional OCD.
Okay.
It's not about those outward compulsions we often associate with OCD.
Right.
It's about being bombarded
Right.
by these intrusive, often very disturbing thoughts.
In one of the interviews, he gets really specific about the types of thoughts he struggles with.
Oh, wow.
Fear of hating God, fear of being violent.
It's heartbreaking to hear him describe the intensity of those thoughts.
It really is.
It's a stark reminder that mental health challenges can affect anyone,
Yes.
regardless of their outward achievements or how perfect their life might seem.
Absolutely. And what I find so inspiring is that he doesn't shy away from talking about it.
Right.
He wants to help others who are struggling to let them know that they're not alone.
It's a powerful message of hope and resilience,
Yeah.
especially in a genre like country music where there can be this pressure to project an image of strength and stoicism.
Yeah.
He's breaking down those barriers.
He also talks about how the demands of touring, being away from his family for long stretches, can really trigger his anxiety.
Right.
He tries to maximize the time he has with them when he's home, but it's clearly a difficult balancing act.
Yeah. Highlights the human cost of success, right?
Yeah.
The trade-offs that often come with pursuing your dreams.
He makes this really powerful statement about the intensity of his OCD.
Oh, yes. The analogy he uses is incredibly striking.
He says that if someone murdered his entire family, he would rather see them go free than endure the torment of his OCD.
Wow.
It's a really heavy statement, but it shows you just how debilitating this condition can be.
And the fact that he's able to function at such a high level,
Right.
write music, perform, connect with fans,
Right.
while battling those thoughts,
Right.
it's truly remarkable.
It speaks volumes about his resilience and his commitment to his craft.
He also talks about how he used to try and avoid anything that might trigger his OCD,
Okay.
like violent movies or video games,
Yeah, I see.
but realized that avoidance just makes it worse.
It's almost like giving those thoughts more power by trying to suppress them.
Exactly. He emphasizes that the key is learning to live with the uncertainty,
Okay.
accepting that those thoughts might pop up,
Yeah.
but not letting them define him or control his actions.
It's a huge step towards reclaiming your power in the face of those intrusive thoughts.
And this brings us to another fascinating point.
Yeah.
His conversation with Joe Rogan about how his success hasn't necessarily brought him those typical feelings of euphoria or excitement.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Rogan actually suggests that this might be a superpower. His ability to stay grounded and focused even when surrounded by these incredible achievements.
It's almost like he's not letting the hype sweep him away,
Right.
which allows him to stay true to himself and his art.
Rogan even compares it to the mindset of someone like Sturgill Simpson, who's known for being fiercely independent and following his own artistic vision,
Yeah.
regardless of trends or expectations.
And it's clear that Combs really admires that about Simpson.
Oh, yeah.
He sees him as a true artist focused on the music itself,
Right.
without getting bogged down by the trappings of fame.
It's a refreshing perspective in a world that often prioritizes image over substance.
And speaking of authenticity, there's a really interesting part in the Rogan interview where they talk about the divide between mainstream and non-mainstream country music in Nashville.
Combs acknowledges those two distinct camps
Okay.
and admits he didn't move to Nashville with the intention of becoming a country star. He just wanted to make music.
He initially thought he might end up writing songs for other artists.
Yeah, he says because everybody in town was hot, and he didn't fit that conventional country singer mold.
He even jokes that if you showed someone 10 pictures of country singers, no one would pick him.
Exactly. But then, as luck would have it, there was this kind of seismic shift in the country music landscape.
Okay, what happened?
Combs credits Chris Stapleton's performance of Tennessee Whiskey with Justin Timberlake at the CMAs as a pivotal moment.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It was a game changer, proving that there was a huge audience for artists who didn't fit the traditional country image.
Stapleton had been a respected songwriter in Nashville for years,
Right.
but that performance catapulted him to mainstream success,
It did.
which really paved the way for artists like Combs to pursue their own unique paths.
It's interesting to consider how those seemingly random events can have such a profound impact on an entire industry.
And you can't discount Combs' savvy use of social media to build his fan base early on.
Oh, absolutely.
It gave him more negotiating power when he eventually signed with a record label.
It's a smart strategy that more and more artists are adopting today.
It is.
But it also highlights that even with immense talent and hard work timing and a bit of luck, still play a role.
It's like all the pieces have to fall into place at just the right time.
Yeah.
Speaking of luck, that story about being at Ed Sheeran's house when the pandemic hit is wild.
It's like a scene from a movie.
It is.
They're having this carefree, fun weekend, completely unaware of the chaos about to unfold.
A last hurrah before the world shut down.
And we'll leave you hanging on that Sheeran and Shotgun story. Just have to check out the source material for that one.
Okay, back to a more serious topic.
Okay.
We touched on this earlier, but it's worth diving deeper into Combs' struggles with OCD and anxiety.
He's incredibly honest about the nature of his OCD.
Yeah.
That purely obsessional type where the battle is fought within his own mind.
He shares some really disturbing examples of the thoughts he experiences,
Right.
which really highlight the intensity and debilitating nature of this condition.
He even says he wouldn't wish it on his worst enemy.
It's a powerful reminder that those who seem to have it all,
Yeah.
those on top of the world,
Right.
can still be battling these invisible demons.
And the fact that he's willing to talk about it so openly is incredibly powerful.
He talks about how he used to avoid things that he thought might trigger his OCD,
Right.
but eventually realized that avoidance just makes it worse.
He stresses the importance of learning to live with the uncertainty.
Okay.
Accepting that those thoughts might pop up, but knowing that they don't define him.
It's a huge step in reclaiming control and not letting those intrusive thoughts dictate your life.
And he even admits to experiencing these thoughts while performing on stage,
Wow, really?
which is mind-blowing to me.
Can you imagine trying to deliver a killer performance while simultaneously battling those intense, unwanted thoughts?
It's truly remarkable that he's able to push through and maintain his composure.
It speaks to his resilience, his mental fortitude, and his dedication to his craft.
He also talks about how touring and being away from his family for extended periods can exacerbate his anxiety,
Right.
but he tries to make the most of his time with them when he's home.
It's a difficult balancing act, isn't it?
It is.
Trying to pursue your passion while also prioritizing your family and managing your mental health?
It's a constant juggling act that a lot of people can relate to,
Yeah.
even if their job doesn't involve sold-out stadiums.
And speaking of passions, it turns out Combs is a huge UFC fan.
Oh, yes. He and Rogan have this whole lively discussion about some of their favorite fighters and upcoming matches.
So Combs is particularly impressed by John Jones's dominance, calling him the GOAT.
They also delve into Kamaru Usman's incredible run as welterweight champion.
Combs admits he was initially rooting for Usman,
Okay.
but as Usman's success grew, he started to see him as a bit of a villain.
Rogan offers a different perspective,
Okay.
suggesting that Usman's trash-talking and bravado are just part of his competitive persona.
It's interesting how different people can have such varying interpretations of a fighter's behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all part of the fun of being a fan,
Yeah.
choosing who you root for and who you root against.
Combs also expresses his admiration for fighters like Justin Gaethje and Conor McGregor, who are known for their all-out aggressive styles.
They're the kind of fighters who always deliver those edge-of-your-seat matches.
And speaking of exciting matches, Combs is really eager to attend a live UFC event.
Rogan promises to hook him up with tickets.
Nice. Combs is particularly interested in seeing the rematch between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman.
That's definitely a fight with high stakes, and the outcome could really shake up the welterweight division.
Combs also expresses his amazement at how fighters are able to execute these complex techniques and strategies in the midst of the chaos and adrenaline of a fight.
It's a testament to their skill, their preparation, and their mental toughness.
Now, shifting gears a bit, there's this really candid moment in the Rogan interview where Combs opens up about his struggles with his weight.
Right, he admits that he's always been bigger, even as a kid.
And he's aware of the health risks associated with being overweight, especially as he gets older.
He talks about wanting to be able to run around and play with his kids without feeling winded.
And he expresses his desire to take his son on an elk hunt when he's older,
Yeah.
which requires a certain level of fitness.
It's clear that Combs is motivated to make a change for the sake of his health and his family.
He also talks about how he's been inspired by Ethan Suplee's weight loss journey.
Suplee, the actor known for his roles in movies like Remember the Titans And American History X
Right.
lost a significant amount of weight through diet and exercise.
Combs admires Supley's dedication and sees it as proof that it's possible to make a major transformation.
It's a message of hope and empowerment for anyone struggling with similar challenges.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one more interesting tidbit I wanted to mention.
So go.
Combs reveals that he has this quirky superstition about lucky cigarettes.
Really? That's fascinating.
He says that he always flips the last cigarette in the pack upside down and smokes it last.
That's a new one for me.
Apparently, it's a common superstition among smokers.
It's amazing how these little rituals can take on such significance for people.
It's a reminder that even the most down-to-earth people can have their quirky beliefs and habits.
And it's those little quirks that make us all unique.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we're all a mix of contradictions and complexities.
Absolutely. And it's those little details that make these deep dives so much fun. You know, going back to the idea of unexpected collaborations, there's this moment in the 60 Minutes interview I found particularly insightful. Combs is talking about working with Ed Sheeran, and he makes this comment about how Sheeran's success hasn't changed him. He's still the same guy who loves music and enjoys a good time.
I think that speaks to the importance of surrounding yourself with people who ground you, who remind you of what truly matters, even amidst the whirlwind of fame and fortune.
Right. Like having that inner circle that keeps you honest and connected to your roots.
Yeah.
It also made me think about the creative process, how collaborating with someone from a completely different genre can push you outside of your comfort zone and spark new ideas.
Absolutely. And that's something that Combs seems to embrace, that willingness to experiment and explore new sounds. In fact, he mentions in one of the interviews that he initially gravitated towards rock and heavy metal music.
Really, that's surprising. You wouldn't necessarily associate those genres with his current style.
Right. But it makes you wonder how those early influences might have shaped his musical sensibilities in subtle ways.
Maybe it's that blend of genres that gives his music its unique edge. He has that classic country storytelling, but there's also this underlying energy that feels very contemporary.
Speaking of contemporary, one of the things that struck me about these interviews was how open Combs was about the role of social media in his career. He was one of the first country artists to really leverage those platforms to connect with fans directly, and it clearly played a huge role in his rise to fame.
He was really ahead of the curve in that sense. It's almost like he anticipated the way the music industry was shifting and he capitalized on it.
As a great example of how artists today need to be savvy entrepreneurs as well as talented musicians.
And it makes you wonder if that kind of direct connection with fans, bypassing the traditional gatekeepers of the music industry, is the future of how artists build their careers.
It's certainly an interesting trend to watch, and it ties into that theme of authenticity we've been discussing. Fans can sense when an artist is being genuine, when they're not just putting on a persona for the cameras.
Right. It's that realness, that vulnerability that creates a lasting connection. And I think that's a big part of why people are so drawn to Combs' music. They feel like they know him, like he's someone they could hang out with and have a beer with.
He definitely cultivates that everyman image, and it seems to be working for him.
Now, we've talked about some of the lighter aspects of his life and career, but there are moments in these interviews where he gets really raw and honest about his struggles with OCD and anxiety. It's heavy stuff, but I think it's important to acknowledge because it challenges the idea that success is a cure-all for personal problems.
Absolutely. He's living proof that even those who seem to have it all, the fame, the fortune, the adoring fans, can still be battling these inner demons.
And what I find so powerful about his willingness to share these struggles is that it gives hope to others who might be going through something similar. It's a reminder that you're not alone, that even someone like Luke Combs, who seems to have it all figured out, is human and faces challenges just like everyone else.
It also helps to destigmatize mental health issues, which is so important, especially in a society that often tells us to just suck it up or put on a happy face.
Right. He's breaking down those barriers and showing that it's okay to not be okay.
And one of the things he talks about that I think a lot of people can relate to is the feeling of being overwhelmed by intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
He describes his OCD as this constant battle in his own mind, and he uses this incredibly powerful analogy to illustrate the intensity of those thoughts.
Yes. He says he'd rather see the person who murdered his entire family go free than have to endure the torment of his OCD. It's a really heavy statement, but it gives you a glimpse into the level of suffering he experiences.
And it highlights the fact that mental illness isn't just about feeling sad or anxious.
Mm-hmm.
It can manifest in these really debilitating, often terrifying ways.
And it makes you realize that we need to be more compassionate and understanding towards those who are struggling, because we never know what battles someone might be fighting beneath the surface.
He also talks about how he used to try to avoid anything that might trigger those intrusive thoughts, but eventually learned that avoidance just makes it worse.
It's almost like giving those thoughts more power by trying to suppress them.
Exactly. He emphasizes the importance of learning to live with the uncertainty, to accept that those thoughts might pop up, but not letting them control your actions or define who you are.
It's about reclaiming your power and choosing how you respond to those thoughts. And speaking of growth, there's a really interesting part in the Rogan interview where they talk about the evolution of country music and how Combs views his place within that landscape. And he's very aware of the fact that he doesn't fit neatly into either category. He has that classic country storytelling ability, but he also brings in elements of rock pop and even R&B, which gives his music that unique edge. Right. He talks about how Stapleton's performance of Tennessee Whiskey with Justin Timberlake at the CMAs was a pivotal moment, showing that there was a huge audience for artists who didn't fit the traditional country mold. And what's interesting is that Combs didn't move to Nashville with this grand vision of becoming a country star. He just wanted to make music, period. He even jokes that if you showed someone 10 pictures of country singers, no one would pick him out of the lineup. It's amazing how timing and a little bit of luck can play such a huge role in someone's success. And speaking of unexpected detours, we have to circle back to that story about Combs being at Ed Sheeran's house when the pandemic hit. It's like a last hurrah before everything shuts down. Definitely. But first, I want to touch on another topic that Combs discusses in these interviews that I think is really important: his struggles with his weight. He's incredibly open about the fact that he's always been bigger, and he talks about the health risks associated with being overweight, especially as he gets older. Right. There's this societal pressure for men to just tough it out and not talk about their vulnerabilities, especially when it comes to body image, but Combs doesn't shy away from it. It's clear that he's motivated to make a change for the sake of his health and his family. He admires Sapli's dedication and sees it as proof that it's possible to make a major transformation. And it's interesting because we've been talking about Combs's authenticity and his willingness to be vulnerable, and I think his openness about his weight struggles is another example of that. But it's also a testament to his character, his commitment to being real, and his desire to connect with people on a deeper level. Oh, yes, the lucky cigarette ritual. Apparently, it's a common superstition among smokers, but I'd never heard of it before. It's a reminder that we're all a mix of complexities and contradictions, and it's those little details that make us human, that make us interesting. Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we have to address the elephant in the room, that mysterious anecdote about Ed Sheeran in a shotgun. We've been dropping hints, but now it's time to delve into the details. Absolutely. Hit me with it. I know, I've seen pictures. It's insane. So where does the shotgun come into play? Wait, just a shotgun out in the open? That's a bit unnerving. So the shotgun was just part of Sheeran's collection, not some sign of impending danger. For sure. I guess not. It's a good reminder that cultural context can really shape our perceptions of what's normal or acceptable.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, that story is classic Combs.
Yeah.
Finding humor in the unexpected. It paints this really compelling picture
It does.
of a guy who's defying expectations and forging his own path. His story reminds us that it's okay to be a work in progress, that we all have our strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
and that the journey is just as important as the destination. For sure, to see someone like him, a guy who's achieved massive success, be so open about those internal battles,
Yeah.
I think that can be incredibly empowering. It challenges those harmful stereotypes that men need to be tough and stoic and never show weakness. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Luke Combs, what resonates most with you? What are you taking away from his story?
Mold.
Combs' journey is a testament to the power of authenticity, hard work, and a little bit of luck.
It is.
But mostly it's a story about the importance of being comfortable in your own skin, even when the whole world is watching.